What is good, YouTube? What's popping today? In today's video, we are going to be discussing the Blood Syndicate. We're going to talk about how the Blood Syndicate has changed since the 90s. And we're going to be talking about Holocaust, who, like, y'all know about my boy Holocaust. But before we begin this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so we could continue this journey to 700 subscribers in 6 months. I do want to let you guys know that there has been a lot of changes from the Blood Syndicate from back in the day, because back in the 90s when we were first introduced to the Blood Syndicate was already a team when we are first introduced to them. And one of the things about how they got their powers was that they got their powers at the Big Bang event, which also gave Static his powers and a lot of other Bang babies their powers. But in this new Blood Syndicate, it starts off a little different. You see, we see four characters that they focus on. We see Faye, Tech Nine, Flashback, Y Son. But they really only focus on three of these characters, and Y Son isn't one of them. And we start off at the airport where Hannibal King and Tech Nine are being picked up by Carlos. We also have seen that Hannibal King has gone radio silent since coming back from the war. And I don't know about you guys, but it seems to me that Hannibal doesn't really like Carlos based off his sexuality, because back then Faye was a closet homosexual and he had a huge crush on Y's son and he went out of his way to hide it. But Masquerade almost exposed them for that because Masquerade was a transgender. So they both had something to hide. Another thing that I noticed that they kept intact with the Blood Syndicate is that Hannibal King, who we all know as Y's son, is also a Muslim. He had converted when he was in the war, sometime at the war, which is a little different from the 90s. And I also want to let y'all know that the Blood Syndicate as a group is multicultural in their own comic book, but for the most part, they had a lot of Afro Latino characters in it. So I want people to understand that it's a multicultural gang, or they was a gang, and now that they're no longer a gang in this, they have a lot more. I mean, they're focusing on the Afro Latinos. And the way this book is presented, it takes place around the time that Icon and Rocket cleaned up the streets of Dakota. Actually, it shouldn't even say the streets of just Dakota, but the whole entire world. They end up doing that. And I also want to, but the most important thing that I do want to discuss with you guys is Holocaust. Now, y'all should know Holocaust was an original member of the Blood Syndicate. And what's interesting is that Holocaust is not really one of the nicest person. Holocaust is one of them dudes that's a real street guy, and he wants to take over the neighborhood. He's that dude that gave Flashback crack, and then he almost made a woman commit suicide. He even fought Tech Nine for control of the Blood Syndicate, and he ended up losing that fight. But in the process of losing that fight, he ended up going his own right. But one of the biggest changes in this is that he is no longer a member of the Blood Syndicate, but he sees them as a threat. And what I noticed is that another big difference is that he already has his criminal organization, so it's a little different. And one of the things that Holocaust has said is that every gang needs a soldier, and that they're going to have to make a choice sooner or later, which I actually find an interesting quote, because sometimes gangs see themselves as soldiers in some form, shape, or fashion. So I do want to say that. And the other thing that I want to talk about is that when we see that Carlos, aka Faye, he is literally trying to tell Tech Nine that he has gained superpowers. But the issue with this is that when he's trying to explain it, his own sister, Sarah, who we all know It's flashback, interrupts him to talk to Tech Nine, and she's happy to see Tech Nine for coming back from the war. But Holocaust had just got done slapping up some guys, and then they went off. And from my observation, it seems like Sarah and Carlos owe Holocaust some form of money, or these guys are just out here like trying to start some beef with somebody. And when they start shooting at them, at the public, Tech Nine ends up creating a bazooka out of nowhere. And here's the thing about Tech Nine that I want you guys to understand. Tech Nine powers is that he can create and materialize weapons out of nowhere, and he has unlimited ammo at his disposal, which means realistically, if he wanted to, he could create a Gatling gun and just not run out of ammo, which is really great. But Carlos ends up telling Sarah to go back in time to save the people who was killed during the bombing because the guy blew himself up. But the catch of this is that I want you guys to understand this is that she could only go back 3 seconds. So as he's like begging her to go back, and she's like, I'm on it, I'm about to go back. Fade grabs Tech Nine and fades to the bottom of the sewer. But let's just talk about flashback, because the thing about flashback and her powers go back in time is that she will be the only one to remember what happens. That's the thing about her powers. She remembers what happened, which is how Holocaust, as I touched on before, Holocaust ended up getting her on drugs because she wanted to cope with the pain of it. And this also leads us into how Carlos or Fade ends up telling Tech Nine that he has superpowers. And I do wanted to get through this with the Blood Syndicate, because this is, like I said, a little different, because Wise Son and Tech Nine were soldiers first. Like, they're now soldiers. And it doesn't seem to be like they are gang members. And it doesn't appear to be as though the members of the Blood Syndicate, they're gangs. At least the Afro Latinos and African American, the four characters that we mentioned, the main people that they focus on. I should have said five because it was actually five characters because Holocaust. But those characters doesn't appear like they're in a gang like they was in the original thing. So those are some interesting changes that they made. And I don't have a problem with them not being in a gang per se, but I want to see where they go with this. I want to see where they go, because it's curious to see how they're going to do Aqua Maria, dog, who's a freaking dog that could talk. How they going to do DMZ. DMZ is an alien. He never speaks. So, how they gonna do Boogeyman? I'm really curious on how they gonna do it. Boogeyman is a white dude. They're gonna do Brick House. She's Hispanic. I'm curious, y'all. I mean, let me know what you guys think about the Blood Syndicate season one, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.